Hey guys, so I wanted to do a Q&A style video. So I asked for questions on Facebook and Instagram and I got a bunch of them. So that's what we're gonna do today. I am not in my normal setup because I'm exhausted. I worked 8 hours on my feet all day and I don't want to stand, and where I normally film I have to stand. I have my laptop over here, which is where I have all the questions. So if you see me looking over here, that's why. And yeah, we're just gonna start with Facebook and go into Instagram and hope this isn't gonna be an endless video because y'all asked some really deep questions. So the first one is from Ivana Quell, and she asked me to talk about what techniques can be played on specific instruments, specific flutes, and which ones cannot be. For the most part, I think they're pretty much universal. The one thing I will say is that for me and for a lot of players, in the flute techniques are a no-go on piccolo. My reasoning behind this is because it can cause the instrument to crack quicker. You're pushing air in a way that isn't supposed to be through the instrument, and it can heat the instrument too quickly from the inside out, which it could cause it to crack. It's just a risk I'm not willing to take with my instrument. But there are some players who will do it, so that's something to keep in mind. I talk a little bit about this more in my contemporary techniques for piccolo video, and I do talk about specific techniques in my contemporary techniques for composers videos, but obviously I haven't made all of those yet. Hopefully I will be able to make some more now, but yeah, I think the other thing to think about is, I don't know a ton about bass flute, so I'm not including bass flute into this because I don't have one, so I don't have the personal experience with it. I can talk about it in theory, but I can't really talk about it in practice. I think Leanna Keith is a huge bass flute player, and she would be very, very helpful with that. So hopefully Leanna doesn't mind me sending some of you guys over there if that's something you are interested in. With alto, I will say there is a difference between a straight head joint alto and a curved head joint alto when it comes to multiphonics. And with the big flutes, jet whistle just isn't as effective because you're not getting as much air through a small space as you would with C flute. It's just physics. I think really everything else is pretty much fine. If I'm missing one, flutists, please tell me, but I don't think there's really anything that doesn't translate. The bigger flutes are really hard to do whistle tones on, but you can do them. I think the biggest limitation is difficulty and not physical capacity. Then Sky Vendurin asked me to talk about basic software setups and mixing tips for recording and streaming electronics and live streaming. I honestly don't live stream enough. A lot of you guys know that. I haven't had a lot of success. I've had some completely dead audio streams. And because I film on my phone, I have issues with internet. But I do use a mic that Shure makes that is built for the iPhone. It's the MV88. It's a little paired condenser mic that you can just fit into the lightning port of your phone. I really like it, and Shure makes a couple apps that make like fiddling with it really easily. They make an audio only app where you can fiddle with the gain and how much is picking up, and you can even change polar patterns, I think. I don't use it very often, so at least anymore. When I was recording 52 Weeks, I was using it a lot more. And then they also now have a video app which gives you the same capacity with video, obviously. I find it drains my battery really quickly, so I try to use it sparingly. And if it's something that I don't need to fiddle with the levels very much on, I'll just use the regular camera app on my phone. In terms of mixing, again, I'm not very skilled with that. I tend to just give composers raw audio files. I can do a little bit myself. I use Reaper personally. Reaper is a digital audio workstation, if you don't know what that is. It's basically software to help you mix audio and to record audio. And it is incredibly low cost. It's a $60 license, and right now it is free for all users, which is super cool. This is not a Reaper ad, I just really enjoy using it. And it was something that I could afford when I got into all this stuff, which was after I was in school, and so I didn't have the educational discounts that some of you guys might have been able to take advantage of. Yeah, I don't think I'm actually the best person to ask for that because I don't do a lot of this. I just kind of do a lot of stuff in post and mess with levels in post to try to get it to sound decent. But I'm kind of a plug and go kind of girl, honestly. And I haven't had too many issues with it. I don't do a ton of live electronics recordings, so that helps. But I have dynamic mics that I use for that, so I don't have as many issues. It granted doesn't give them as much sound quality, but that's a whole nother thing. Yeah, I think the best answer I could give is I don't really know very well. So now we're gonna go to Instagram, and I'm sorry if I butcher any of your names. Sammy Saif 21 asked me to talk about Berio's flute sequenza and how realistically doable it is. And that's kind of an interesting question. I've never actually performed the sequenza. I learned it and I've played a section of it in 365, but I've never really played it in full for real. That's actually probably something I should work on, but there's too many projects and not enough time. I think it's hard because he rewrote it. For those of you who don't know, the Berio sequenza number 1, which is the flute sequenza, was rewritten by Berio later after the original publication. The original publication is very freely notated and it's like time equals space notation essentially. And then he notated it very strictly the second way, and the general consensus within flute players, and I think him himself, was maybe split the difference. I think it's very playable. I don't think with people being able to play Fernie Howe and New Complexity and some of the stuff that people are writing now, I don't think Berio is as difficult as it used to be, at least in terms of like physical capacity. My favorite example of this in historical playing, it's not that old, is the Bear Flute Concerto. It was deemed unplayable by Meiksins, who it was written for, and now everyone and their brother plays it. So I think obviously facility changes with time, and the sequenza is definitely very playable. I think the issue that we run into there is it true to what Berio wanted? And that's the difficulty with that, is that there's no iteration of the score that really says what he wanted because he doesn't particularly like either of them. And he's been quoted saying that. My teacher in my master's actually played the piece for him and he was able to give her critique and things like that, and from what she said, it was never really clear what he was going for there. And so I guess in terms of staying true to the source material and staying true to the composer's intention, no, I don't think it's playable. But in terms of it being a great piece of music and really fun to play, yeah, I think it is. It's just a matter of how comfortable you are, not necessarily doing it justice. But then you also have New Complexity pieces that aren't meant to be played perfectly, so I guess it's all up to your comfort level. Personally, I think it's playable. I would perform it if and when I ever actually learn it properly. Next one is Enrico Filea, I'm sorry, asked, must know pieces for composers who approach contemporary flute techniques. That is a very, very tricky question, just because there is a lot of repertoire for flute and there's a lot of contemporary techniques to cover, and there's a lot of music for flute that uses contemporary techniques in very different ways. My best suggestion, and I'm trying not to make this answer a cop-out, but I think it's going to be. I think that's just kind of what it's gonna have to happen. But my best answer is I think the pieces that are must know are the pieces written by composers who use techniques in a way that appeals to you. There's so many different ways to use these techniques, and as long as they're functional flute-wise, then it's great. What I will warn is composers like Sciarrino created techniques, and he did so in conjunction with a flutist. They are amazing techniques, and some of them are incredibly fun to play, and I really enjoy seeing them in scores, but I do also see a lot of composers take Sciarrino as kind of a standard for technique and not realize how limited of a scale that technique was outside of his music. I don't have any problem with people using those techniques. I just caution you to know that some of them are, one, very difficult, and two, things that the player will have to learn how to do, and you either have to explain it very clearly or provide resources. Those of you who've been following this channel for a long time know about my Sciarrino whistle tone experience. It was just very, very difficult to learn, and I didn't realize what it was until I was in the process of learning it. And I was very, very lucky that some people could help me. But it was something that I didn't know existed. And while it's been used outside of Sciarrino's music now, it wasn't something that I'd ever been taught could exist. Another thing is his like bird warble trill, where you finger notes in the left hand and use the 2 trill keys to create this bird warble sound. Really easy to do, really fun, great sound. Not really something that's easily explainable. The only time I've ever seen it explained in a score was in Italian with no translation. And it took my teacher and I about 45 minutes of YouTube videos to figure out what sound it was supposed to be creating so she could tell me how to do it. So I just, with those kinds of sounds, be very careful and explain them very clearly, and be aware that sometimes you're going to be asking a performer to be learning something that they didn't know how to do until you asked them to. Yeah, so that's kind of more what not to do, but Score Follower itself, like the organization, and also score following videos are super helpful because you can see the score and hear what's actually resulting and see if it's actually effective. Rather than having like specific pieces and specific composers to look at, I think finding resources of, not to talk about myself, but people like me who talk about these kinds of things, and also composers who have score following videos so you can really see whether it's worth it, essentially, and also see how they're applied, how they notate it, and whether the sound that you expect to be on the page is what the flutist is actually doing. I think that's much more helpful than like me telling you a list of pieces that you should know. Next, Will Padera. How and why do you get the metal to make the whistly noise? There's lots of whistly noises. This particularly whistly noise requires very little air at very low speeds. But I don't know. I love flute. Like, clearly you guys know this. I talk about the flute on the internet a lot, and to everyone who knows me in person, this is not different. But it's fun. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and it's something that I really love doing, and the whistly sounds are fun. And I don't know, they're pretty. And the final question, which I kind of left for last because I think I have the most to say about it, is from Flute. What do you think about the surge of online musical content from people who don't normally post? And that is a very interesting question, considering that this is something I've been doing on YouTube since 2015, on the internet since 2012. I've been doing this a very long time, and this is something that I really am passionate about and really love, and have put a lot of time and effort into creating content and thinking about different ways to approach it. And I think it's great to see new content being created. I think it's really awesome, and I think it's a great addition to the community. I just hope it sustains. My concern is that people are going to go back to their normal lives and they're going to forget about the internet as this creation source. They're going to forget about the internet as this performance space. One of the things I talk about in these videos and also in person is I really love the internet as a space for creation and not as a space for archive. Clearly, I do a lot of performance on the internet that exists for the internet and does not leave the internet. I do play some of these pieces in my own rep, in live in person, but a lot of this stuff I wanted to do for the internet and for my internet audience. So I'm concerned that this surge of content is temporary, and once people are able to go back to performing in person, which is awesome, and I can't wait to go back to performing in person as well, they won't continue to supplement what they're doing in person with online creation. And that's what scares me, but we'll have to wait and see with that. I do caution people that YouTube is not easy to be successful on. I don't find myself to be successful on YouTube. I have a great audience and I have a great following, but I'm by no means making a living on this. I cannot monetize my channel even if I wanted to, and this is something I do as a passion project and something that I love and something that I want to develop in the music community, not something I want to do to supplement my income. If and when I can do that, that will be an awesome bonus, but it is not my intention. There's been a lot of posts on Facebook, and I don't use a ton of other social medias besides YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, so I don't know where else it has kind of fallen into, but there's been a trend on Facebook to kind of follow for follow, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, mainly because that post is framed as a way to make money, but also because the real roadblock and the real interest in being on YouTube is to have people watch your content. Well, the subscriber number is great and it's a great boost to your ego, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't matter in the end, because if people aren't watching your videos, you could have 1 million subscribers and it wouldn't matter. So I think I'd like to see a bigger push in like, hey, here's this thing I made and it's really cool and I think you should watch it, rather than, hey, here's this channel I haven't posted on in 3 years. I'm planning to make things and I'm planning to post on it, but in the meantime, please subscribe to this thing that you can't really watch unless it's 3-year-old videos, which are great, but like not really the point right now and not really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in what you're doing right now. What live stream performances are you creating? What interesting videos are you talking about interesting musical subjects? Carter Rice just posted a really interesting video about creativity and ways he finds to be creative. And that is much more interesting, and I was much more willing to watch that 14-minute video than I am to subscribe to a channel and watch archived performances. I do watch performances, I love music, obviously, but I'm not going to subscribe necessarily because you're not creating content. The subscription is because you want to be engaged with your content. You want to have people see what you're making and have them go, oh, awesome, that person posted. I'm gonna go watch that right now, or oh, sweet, I'm gonna add that to watch later because I wanna see that later. If you're not making content, I don't particularly care to be subscribed to you, and that might seem callous, but it's how I feel. And I've been around this YouTube internet creation world for a long time, a lot longer than some of these people have, and I've seen a lot of people kind of try and fade, or not necessarily fail, but stop, and I don't know, I've put in a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, and I don't want people to just think they can waltz in here, ask people to follow them, not make content, and then do well. Yeah. That being said, don't take this as me going, you should not make YouTube videos, you shouldn't be encroaching on my space. I'm not a territorial person in this YouTube space. Like, I can't be. That's not cool. I want other people to do the things that I'm doing and do them better. Like, I want people to take my ideas and run with them, because that means that we're changing the way that music is done. So if you want to start making videos, absolutely go for it. I do recommend that you kind of have a spin on it. Like, don't just make the same things that everyone's making. And that's not to say that, like, don't copy my videos, damn it. But it's more, if someone's already carved out a niche, then maybe try to find a niche that's like slightly to the left of the one that you wanted originally. And if not, like, keep doing what you want to do. Just do it well. Like, put effort into it and put time into it, and then people will appreciate your content. So yeah, I think I have mixed feelings is the best answer. I want it to succeed. I want people to do well, and I want people to take up YouTube in a way that I'm not alone in this space anymore, because I do feel a little alone. But I also do have a lot of reservations about the way people are going about it right now. And I get it, like, everyone's stuck at home. I'm very lucky that I have a job that requires me to go in, so I get to leave my apartment for 8 hours a day. The risks of it are aside. I do actually get to go into the world, and I have to go into the world. So I have a different perspective on this whole thing than a lot of people would. But I don't know, I have so many, there's so much conflict. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end this video here, because I've been talking for a long time and I'm gonna have to edit this. These were very deep music-y questions. I would be happy to make a more light, like, personal video if you guys are interested in that, or if you want me to just keep talking about music all the time, I'm perfectly happy doing that, clearly. But if you like this video, please give it a like. If you're new here, subscribe. If you want to support me more, check out my Patreon, and I will see you guys very soon. Like, I'm not a territorial